So I think obviously there are quite a few of them, coming to mind. 50 years, it's a long time. But I would say that if I need to mention one, it will be the fact that started as one AOC, regional operator, operating point to point, to become a mid-sized global player, operating a global network, a mixed fleet, 76, 74, now the 777 as well. I would say that will be our biggest achievement. And the thing is, we see that only as the beginning in a way. So there's much more that we are planning over the next few years and decades. And for us, there's no limit at what we can achieve, and we hope that that's what the future will bring. So I would say, in a way, the 777, it's an obvious choice in that regard in terms of what comes next. We implemented our first unit earlier this year in April. We've got two more units coming in towards the end of the year, in the last quarter. We've got 5 more aircrafts coming over the next year and a half or so. So for us, that's the natural growth, and it's something that we already started to invest in a long time ago, and even before COVID, and finally we start to see the fruition of that. So I think, again, it really depends on the region that you look at. I would say one thing is we see the geopolitical situation. Obviously, that creates a lot of volatility in the market, and the changes on the trade lanes, the cost of the fuel. I would say from our perspective, despite everything that I've just mentioned, as a schedule operator predominantly, we see our business continue to go as usual in that respect. So the trade lanes that we've been developing for a very long time, I think we see how the customers trust in our service, and despite maybe all the challenges, we still see the support on the normal the schedule operation that we have. I would say the 1st of July, which is just around the corner, there's still a big question mark in terms of the new taxation in Europe on the e-commerce. So that's might have a big impact on the export out of China. And we all know e-commerce play a big part of that. And if e-commerce export goes down, we can all expect that there will also be impact on the air freight prices. And as such, we've seen it last year, with the taxation in the US, there could be also a change in terms of how airlines will deploy their capacity in order to tackle that. So I would say in the near future, for 2026, that's the next thing. There's another taxation that's supposed to come into effect at the 1st of November in Europe, and a handling fee on, again, e-commerce out of China. So I would say at the moment, other than the geopolitical situation, which is to a certain degree still ongoing, that I would say the biggest question mark. But as I said, at least from our perspective, as we are a schedule operator, we've been, I don't know if to say lucky, but we've been, our business has been more or less going as normal. Airlines which have a big exposure to e-commerce in terms of the export out of China will need to consider how they're going to deploy their aircraft. And I think, speaking with the e-commerce platforms, the general notion is that there will be between 30 to 50% reduction in terms of the volumes export out of China into Europe. When we're talking about the e-commerce, it's huge volumes. So as such, it would mean that airlines that currently operate out of Europe, out of China into Europe, will need to consider where they're going to deploy those aircrafts. That by itself can obviously have a knockout effect on other markets if all of a sudden there will be a huge shift of capacity, whether that will be moving out of Europe into the US or other markets, Trans-Pacific potentially. And I think that's where we might see a big impact. Considering that it also takes place during the summer period, which is traditionally the slow season, I think those two things together can have a negative impact on the yields. Maybe it can be balanced with the geopolitical situation and the fact that capacity today is still not where it was pre-war, before the 28th of February. But I think those are things that are a little bit hard to predict at the moment. We'll need to wait and see how things develop. So Challenge Group, we are a freighter operator, and as such, our main focus in terms of business or type of commodities that we are looking at, the verticals, the special cargo that needs freighter in order to fly. That can be the capital equipment, the valuables, the aerospace and defense, automobile, live animals, dangerous goods, e-commerce, of course, as well. And, and when we look at India, it's clearly that all those verticals exist in India, and India as an economy will continue to grow. We've seen a rapid growth over the last few years. We've now been operating in India for over 3 years. We started with 2 weekly flights. We grew it up to nearly 6 weekly flights, operating 767. And I'm happy to say that we are now upgrading the service from 767 to 777 3 times a week. And we definitely see a huge potential in India, not just in terms of the India into Europe or back, but definitely India to the US, Latin America, Africa, and other trade lanes which fit very perfectly and very nicely within our network.
Yep.
So we definitely see a huge potential in terms of the Indian market, both inbound and outbound. And we are quite sure that we will see our growth in the Indian market, not necessarily just limited to Mumbai, but to other destinations in the future. So India is known for the aerospace and defense, and there's very well developed, I would say, industry when it comes to that. Capital equipment, all sort of good, server racks, of course, e-commerce, which is a growing also sector within India, perishable. Again, the Indian market or the Indian consumers, even on the import side, not necessarily just on the export side, there's a growing demand. Pharmaceuticals, obviously, which is one of the biggest, I would say, verticals within the Indian economy. All of those sits and fit perfectly within what we as the Challenge Group do, which is focus on the end-to-end vertical markets. So I have to say that we as the Challenge Group, we haven't seen much change within what we currently do in China. On the contrary, as of next week, we are now opening a new trade lane connecting Shanghai with Europe and, of course, our network. I think we made a cautious and conscious decision several years ago when we established our operation in China to limit our exposure to e-commerce, no more than 50% of our business. And where other airlines maybe put all the eggs in one basket, we wanted to make sure that we are not just serving one type of commodity, that we are serving the whole market. And I think when we've seen last year the changes, whether that was in the US, this year in Europe, so far we haven't been impacted. Our frequencies out of China, whether that's mainland China or Hong Kong, remain the same. And as I've mentioned, we are now starting Shanghai with 3 weekly rotations between Shanghai and Europe. And we are quite confident that as we are coming towards the end of the year, we will be able to increase the frequencies. So looking at us, we haven't been impacted, I have to say. So historically, we are a 747 operator. Of course, we implemented a 767 several years back. And as of this year, as I mentioned earlier, we started to implement also the 777. We made, again, a conscious decision to invest in the 777. Over the next 2.5 years, we are going to implement in total, at the moment, as it stands, 8 units. And we are actively looking for more units to buy. And so in a way, you can say that for the years to come, as the 747 will get older, and at some point we obviously, unfortunately, we will need to retire maybe some of those units, the 777 will become the backbone of our wide-body fleet. I think it's a great aircraft. We've been operating it now for several months. We are very, very happy with the performance. and we are looking forward to get more of the units as soon as possible. So the plan is, again, 3 this year, out of which we already took delivery of 1, 3 more deliveries next year, and 2 more deliveries the year after. So that will bring us to 8 units in total, and we are actively looking for more feedstock. If we could get our hands on, we will try to get those in order to convert them as well. 8 units in total will already bring us to, again, it's quite a big number, and that will become over the next few years the backbone of our fleet. Saying that, we are actively looking to buy more 747. However, there are no more of those being manufactured. Obviously, the feedstock of those is getting slimmer and smaller as the years go by, and the 777 will become our main frame over the next few years. So I think it's not necessarily just for the challenge group. I think if we look specifically in Southeast Asia or Asia Pacific maybe overall, I would say that over the past 12 months or so, the biggest vertical that has been growing will be the server racks, so the capital equipment. And we've seen tremendous growth, whether that's out of Southeast Asia outbound to Europe and the US or back, but also within Southeast Asia. That's definitely one of the biggest sectors that has been growing. The pharmaceuticals, which has been growing now for quite a few years, that also has been growing, but maybe not in the same pace as others. If I need to pick 2 verticals, those will be the 2 biggest, but definitely the server racks has been growing now extensively for the past 12 months or so.